Hello, welcome back to another evening of shared stories and adventures. Tonight, we're diving into the world of Hawkins, Indiana, one last time. And I have to tell you, my heart is absolutely racing just thinking about it. I'll be covering all the finale theories I can fit in for tonight. And honestly, there's so much to unpack that we could probably do 3 separate videos and still not cover everything. Volume 2 dropped yesterday on Christmas Day, which was both the best and worst present the Duffers could have given us. Best because we finally got answers to questions we've been asking since the season premiere, and worst because now we're left with even bigger questions and only a few days to theorise before the finale itself arrives on December 31st. So here's how we're going to structure tonight's deep dive. We'll start with a comprehensive recap of where Volume 2 left us, because those 3 episodes fundamentally changed everything we thought we understood about this entire universe. Then we're moving on to the big theories, who the real villain actually is, what's going to happen in that final battle, the strategic implications of Operation Beanstalk, and of course, the question that's keeping everyone up at night: who's going to die? There's plenty to get talking about, and I know we're all feeling a lot of emotions right now. Excitement, dread, anticipation, maybe even a little grief, knowing this journey is almost over. But if you like what I do here and want a way to support the channel as we head into this finale together, consider subscribing down below. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss my post-finale breakdown, because we're going to have so much to discuss once we actually know how this story ends. For now though, grab your favourite blanket, maybe make yourself some Eggo waffles in honour of 11, get as comfortable as you can given the circumstances, and let's begin this final theory session together. Now, before we can dive into theories about the finale and what we think is going to happen in that final confrontation, we absolutely need to talk about where Volume 2 left us. Because honestly, and I mean this with my whole chest, those 3 episodes changed everything we thought we knew about the Upside Down, about Hawkins' lab, about what we're actually dealing with here. I've been watching Stranger Things since the summer of 2016, theorising and analysing every frame for years, and Volume 2 still managed to completely blindside me with revelations I never saw coming. The biggest reveal, and I mean the absolute biggest game changer in the entire history of this show, came from Dustin Henderson. Our boy Dustin, who's been the heart and brain of this group since day one, who's lost so much already: Bob, Eddie, nearly losing Steve multiple times. He's the one who finds Dr. Brenner's hidden journals in the upside-down version of Hawkins' lab. And I need you to understand how significant this discovery is, because these journals completely recontextualized the entire series. Everything we thought we understood about the mythology, about how this nightmare started, about what dimension we're even fighting against, all of it gets turned on its head. According to what Dustin learned from those journals, painstakingly reading through Brenner's meticulous notes and scientific observations, the Upside Down isn't actually its own dimension. It never was. It's a wormhole, a bridge, a tunnel connecting our world to another realm that Dustin immediately recognizes from his Dungeons and Dragons knowledge and calls the Abyss, named after the D and D planes of chaos and evil, the outer planes where the most dangerous entities in the sea multiverse reside, that red, desolate, Mars-like wasteland we've seen glimpses of throughout the season. Those brief flashes when Holly Wheeler escapes from Vecna's mental prison, those horrifying vistas that look like nothing on Earth, that's the Abyss. That's where Vecna actually lives when he's not terrorizing people through their minds. That's where 11 sent Henry Creel all those years ago, when she was just a frightened child in Hawkins' lab, using her powers instinctively to defend herself and the other children from a monster she didn't fully understand. She didn't banish him to the Upside Down. She sent him through the Upside Down to the Abyss, to a dimension of pure malevolence that exists on the other side of the wormhole. The Upside Down, that twisted mirror version of Hawkins frozen in time on November 6th, 1983, is just the tunnel connecting the 2 worlds. It's held together by this massive ball of exotic matter that Nancy Wheeler shot at earlier in the season. Back in episode 3, thinking it was some kind of shield generator protecting Vecna's lair. And in a way, she wasn't entirely wrong. That exotic matter is protecting something, just not in the way any of us thought. I've got to say, this revelation completely blew my mind when Dustin explained it to the group. We've spent 5 entire seasons, 9 years in real time, thinking the Upside Down was the main threat, the source of all the evil and darkness plaguing Hawkins. We thought 11 accidentally created it, or opened it, or somehow brought it into existence that night in the lab when Brenner forced her to make contact with the Demogorgon. But it turns out the Upside Down is basically just the bridge, the wormhole connecting Earth to this other dimension of pure chaos and evil. It's infrastructure, not the destination. The exotic matter is what's holding the whole structure together, keeping the wormhole stable and maintaining the connection between dimensions. When Nancy shot at it with that rifle, when she unloaded those rounds into what she thought was a force field, she didn't destroy it completely. It's far too massive and dense for conventional weapons to obliterate. But she disturbed it enough to destabilize things, to make the structure less stable, to create vulnerabilities they might be able to exploit in the final battle. And here's what makes this even more disturbing. That exotic matter, that impossible substance holding a wormhole open between dimensions, wasn't created by dark magic, or summoned by ancient rituals, or manifested by Vecna's psychic powers. It was created by science, by human science, by Hawkins' lab, by Dr. Martin Brenner and the team of researchers working on projects we're only now beginning to understand the full scope of. This raises absolutely massive questions about Dr. Brenner's role in all of this, about what he knew and when he knew it, about whether the experiments on children like 11 were always part of some larger plan to control or weaponize the connection to the abyss. Was Brenner trying to close the wormhole or stabilize it? Was he trying to defend Earth from the abyss or create a way to harness its power? We still don't have complete answers, but the implications are terrifying. The abyss itself is where things get really, truly cosmically horrifying. And I don't use that word lightly. I mean Lovecraftian levels of existential dread. The kind of horror that makes you question the fundamental nature of reality and humanity's place in a universe that contains such places. That's where Holly Wheeler and the other 12 kidnapped children are being held right now, trapped in what Max named the pain tree after seeing it in Vecna's memories. They're entombed in these organic spires, these grotesque biological structures that look like a fusion of plant matter and something darker, more alien. The children are suspended inside them, their bodies penetrated by vines that pump them full of mind flayer particles, connecting them directly to Vecna and to this giant beating heart that hovers above him in the centre of his lair. The heart itself is this massive, pulsating organ the size of a small house, suspended in the air by tendrils of darkness, beating with a rhythm that's described as almost hypnotic. It glows with this sickly red light, and when Holly briefly manages to get close enough to it during one of her escape attempts, she can feel it pulling at something inside her, trying to synchronize her heartbeat with its own. It's the central nervous system of Vecna's entire operation, the hub that connects all the children together and amplifies their psychic powers for whatever horrifying purpose he has planned. When Holly briefly escapes from Vecna's mindscape, which she's named Camazotz, after the evil planet from A Wrinkle in Time, her favourite book and one of the most important pieces of literature in understanding this season's themes, she wakes up in her actual physical body in the abyss. It's the first time we've seen what the abyss actually looks like from ground level, and it's so much worse than the brief glimpses we've gotten before. Holly manages to rip the organic vines from her body, which is shown in graphic detail that makes you understand just how much pain these children are in. The vines aren't just wrapped around them, they're penetrating their skin, their veins, almost fused with their circulatory systems. When Holly tears them free, she's bleeding from dozens of puncture wounds, her arms covered in these circular marks, where the vines had attached to her like some kind of nightmarish medical equipment. She tries to run, driven by pure survival instinct and the desperate hope that she can somehow find a way back home to Mike and her family. But instead of finding the Upside Down, Instead of finding that twisted mirror of Hawkins, where at least the geography would be familiar, she steps out into this vast wasteland with a stormy yellow sky. The sky isn't just yellow, it's this sick, sulphurous colour, roiling with clouds that move in unnatural patterns, occasionally lit by lightning that seems to strike upward instead of down. The ground beneath her feet is rocky and volcanic, all sharp edges and treacherous terrain, with canyons that drop away into seemingly infinite darkness. In the distance, Holly can see what looks like massive structures, towers or spires or something even more alien, but the perspective is all wrong. Like the distance isn't working the way it should, like space itself is bent in this dimension. When she tries to move toward them, she doesn't seem to get any closer, as if the abyss itself is conspiring to keep her lost and alone. She even finds a rift at one point during her desperate flight, a tear in the dimensional fabric that shows the upside down below. It's a window back to something closer to home, close enough that she thinks she might be able to jump through if she's brave enough. She can see the twisted version of Hawkins through the rift, can see the dark sky and the floating particles and the dead landscape. It looks almost welcoming compared to where she is now. Holly takes the leap. She jumps toward the rift, plummeting toward the upside down below, wind screaming past her ears, her heart in her throat as she falls through the dimensional boundary. For just a moment, she thinks she's going to make it. She thinks she's going to escape this nightmare and find her way back to the others who can help her. But Vecna catches her mid-air. His powers reach across the dimensional divide, manifesting as these massive tendrils of shadow that wrap around her body and arrest her fall with brutal force. She's jerked to a stop, the breath knocked out of her lungs, and then she's being dragged back up through the rift, pulled away from the upside down and back into the abyss, back to the pain tree, back to her prison. It's honestly one of the most heartbreaking sequences in the entire show. This 12-year-old girl making a desperate bid for freedom, coming so close to escape, and then having it ripped away from her in the most visceral way possible. The look on Holly's face when she realizes she's caught, when she understands that Vecna isn't going to let her go, no matter how hard she fights, it's devastating. The name Camazotz for Vecna's mindscape is absolutely perfect, and I love that they gave Holly this literary connection because it tells us so much about her character. In A Wrinkle in Time, which is clearly Mike's favourite book given how many times he's made Holly read it with him, Camazotz is this dystopian planet ruled by a giant disembodied brain called IT that enforces conformity and controls everyone through psychic domination. Sound familiar? IT doesn't just control people, it erases their individuality, makes them all think and act the same, turns an entire planet into a hive mind with no room for independent thought or choice. Vecna's doing the same thing with these children. He's taking 13 unique individuals with their own thoughts and feelings and identities, and he's trying to merge them into a single weapon, a unified source of power he can direct. The children he's trapped aren't just batteries. They're being fundamentally changed, their consciousnesses beginning to blend together in ways that might not be reversible even if they're rescued. This is why the pain tree is such a perfect name. It's not just that the children are experiencing physical pain from the vines and the mind flayer particles. It's that their very selves are in pain, their identities being slowly dissolved into Vecna's collective consciousness. Every moment they spend connected to that system, they lose a little more of who they were, and after weeks or months trapped in there, you have to wonder how much of them will be left to save. Now here's something incredible that happened in Volume 2, a moment that had me genuinely emotional and pumping my fist in triumph. Max Mayfield wakes up. After spending what must have felt like an eternity trapped in Vecna's mindscape, wandering through his memories and his nightmares, alongside Holly Wheeler, experiencing his trauma and his evil from the inside, Max finally escapes back to her body in Hawkins Hospital. Lucas Sinclair is there when she opens her eyes, because of course he is. He's barely left her bedside since they brought her in, even when the nurses tried to make him go home to rest. His parents have been bringing him food and changes of clothes, but he's refused to leave her, holding on to hope with both hands, even when everyone else seemed to think she might never wake up. The moment when Max's eyes flutter open, when she takes that first gasping breath and looks around in confusion, before her gaze finally lands on Lucas. It's one of the most emotionally powerful moments of the entire season. There are no words at first. Lucas just starts crying, these huge body-racking sobs of relief and joy, and all the fear he's been holding back for weeks. And Max, still weak and disoriented, but unmistakably herself, reaches up with a trembling hand to touch his face, to prove to both of them that this is real. "I knew you'd wait," she whispers, her voice rough from disuse. "I knew you wouldn't give up on me." "Never," Lucas tells her, and you can hear his voice breaking. "Never, Max. I'm never giving up on you." It's beautiful and heartbreaking and hopeful all at once, and it's exactly what we needed after all the darkness and horror of Volume 2. A reminder that love and loyalty can survive even the worst nightmares, that these connections between the characters are stronger than any monster or dimension. But Max's awakening isn't just emotionally significant, it's strategically crucial for the finale battle. Because Max spent all that time trapped in Vecna's mindscape, she learned things about him that no one else knows. She wandered through his memories, experienced his childhood traumas, witnessed the moments that turned him from Henry Creel into the monster Vecna. She saw his vulnerabilities, the cracks in his psychic armor, the places where he's weak or defensive or afraid. She knows that place better than anyone now. She knows the layout of Camazotz, the geography of his mind, how the memories connect to each other, where the strong defenses are, and where the weak points exist. She might even know it better than Vecna himself, because she's had time to explore and analyze while he's been focused on enacting his plan. She's mapped every corridor, every chamber, every twisted hallway of his consciousness. And that knowledge is going to be crucial for the final battle. The plan that the group develops, Operation Beanstalk, which we'll get to in detail later, relies heavily on Max being able to guide 11 through Vecna's mind, while 11 goes in to fight him psychically. Without Max's knowledge of that mental landscape, without her ability to navigate the mindscape and avoid the traps Vecna has surely set up, the whole plan would be nearly impossible. Max has become their scout, their pathfinder through enemy territory. And the fact that she earned this knowledge through her own suffering, through weeks of being trapped and tormented, makes her role in the finale feel earned and meaningful. She's not just a victim anymore, she's their best weapon against Vecna's mental defenses. When Max is briefing the group on what she learned, explaining the layout of Camazotz and where Vecna is strongest and weakest, you can see how much it costs her to relive those memories. She keeps her voice steady and clinical, treating it like a military debrief. But Lucas notices the way her hands shake when she talks about certain places, certain memories that were particularly traumatic. She's being incredibly brave, and everyone in that room knows it. Will Byers had his own massive moment in Volume 2, and it's been a long time coming. Not just for the character, but for the fans who've been reading between the lines and picking up on the hints for years now. Will finally came out, to his mum Joyce, to his brother Jonathan, to his stepfather-to-be Hopper, and to all his friends. He told them, in simple, honest terms, that he doesn't like girls, that he's gay, that he's known for a while, but was terrified to say anything because he was afraid of losing the people he loves most. And he revealed something else too, something that Vecna showed him in tormenting visions while he was trapped in the mindscape. Vecna showed Will a future where he was completely alone because of his sexuality. A vision where Mike and Dustin and Lucas all turned away from him in disgust, where Joyce looked at him with disappointment, where he ended up isolated and rejected, with no family and no friends, wandering through life completely alone. It's the cruelest kind of manipulation, taking someone's deepest fear and making it seem inevitable. Vecna knew exactly what would hurt Will most, not physical pain, not even death, but the loss of belonging, the loss of love, the loss of the family and friends who've defined his life. The scene where Will finally speaks his truth is shot so beautifully. They're all gathered in the Byers' house, and Will just starts talking. His voice is shaking, and he keeps his eyes on the floor for most of it, and you can feel how much courage this is taking. He talks about how he's been feeling different for years, how he tried to make himself feel the way he thought he should feel, how he's been carrying this secret like a weight on his chest. And then he talks about what Vecna showed him, the vision of abandonment, the future where his truth meant losing everything. But I realised something, Will says, finally looking up to meet his family's eyes. I realised that hiding was just another kind of being alone, and I'd rather know the truth, even if it hurts, than keep pretending. Joyce doesn't even let him finish. She's already moving, already wrapping him in her arms, and her voice is fierce and protective and full of love when she says, "You'll never lose me." Do you hear me, Will? Never. There is nothing that could make me stop loving you. Jonathan joins the hug immediately, and then Hopper, and suddenly it's this massive group embrace with Will at the centre, being held and supported and reminded that he's not alone. And never will be. When the friend group finds out, because of course Joyce immediately insists that Will's friends need to know so they can support him, their reaction is everything Will needed. Mike looks stunned for about 3 seconds before he's pulling Will into a tight hug. Dustin starts babbling about how this doesn't change anything, except now they can talk about boys together. Lucas just grins and tells Will he's proud of him, and then they all wrap him in this massive group hug, this dog pile of love and acceptance, reinforcing that they love and support him no matter what. It's one of the most genuine, heartfelt moments in the entire series, a reminder that found family means loving each other for who you really are, not who you pretend to be. But Will's story doesn't stop there. We also got confirmation of something fans have been speculating about since Volume 1. Will has powers now. Real, significant psychic powers, though they're different from Eleven's telekinesis or Carly's illusions. Will's powers come from his direct, prolonged exposure to Vecna and the Mind Flayer over the years. He was the first one taken, back in Season 1, when he was trapped in the Upside Down for a week. He was possessed in Season 2, his body and mind invaded by the Mind Flayer, used as a spy and a weapon. All of that contact left its mark. It changed him on a fundamental level. Now, Will can tap into the hive mind when Vecna is nearby and active. He can sense what the Mind Flayer and its creatures are doing. He can use that connection to track them, to understand their movements, even to turn those abilities against them. At the end of Volume 1, we saw Will use this connection to kill Demogorgons, stopping them with his mind, reaching through the hive mind to shut down their nervous systems. His powers aren't from Henry's blood like Eleven's, they're from being plugged into the hive mind back in Season 1, from having the Mind Flayer's tendrils literally inside his body for days. It's body horror as origin story, trauma as superpower. Will's abilities are both a gift and a curse, a reminder of everything he survived, and a tool he can use to protect others from going through the same thing. But there's a significant downside to these powers, a vulnerability that could be catastrophic in the final battle. The connection goes both ways. Vecna can also use that connection against Will, potentially spying through his eyes or tracking targets through him. When Will opens himself up to the hive mind to gather intelligence, he's also exposing himself to Vecna's awareness. It's a double-edged sword, and it means Will is taking enormous personal risk every time he uses his abilities. The group has discussed contingency plans for if Vecna seizes control of Will during the final battle. They have protocols, ways to restrain him or temporarily knock him out if they have to. But Will has made it clear that he wants to help, that after everything Vecna has put him through, he deserves the chance to fight back. And honestly, everyone agrees. Will has earned his place in this battle. He's not a victim anymore. He's a warrior who's been preparing for this fight longer than any of them. Here's where things get truly, deeply, horrifyingly dark. Darker than anything Stranger Things has shown us before. In Volume 2, Eleven and Hopper, along with Joyce and a small strike team, finally managed to rescue Carly from the military base hidden in the Upside Down's version of Fort Wayne. It's a brutal extraction. They have to fight through armed soldiers and security systems, and Carly's own psychic defenses before she even believes they're real, and not another hallucination planted by her captors. When they finally get her out, when she's safe enough to talk, Kaylee reveals something absolutely nightmarish about what Dr. K and her team were doing to her. Doctor, Kay, who we learned earlier in the season, was one of Brenner's proteges, obsessed with continuing his work and perfecting the creation of powered children. Dr. Kay wasn't just imprisoning Carly to study her or run tests on her. She was harvesting her blood, taking it in massive quantities, far more than would be safe, leaving Carly weak and anemic and trapped in a constant cycle of extraction and minimal recovery before the next extraction. And Dr. Kay was transfusing that blood into pregnant women, into unwilling test subjects, trying to create more superpowered children from Carly's genetic material. When Carly nearly escaped during a power failure, using her illusions to make the guards think there was a fire, she discovered the full extent of the horror. In a wing of the facility she'd never been allowed to see before, she found dozens of pregnant women dying in hospital beds. Their bodies were failing, rejecting Kaylee's blood, the foreign genetic material overwhelming their systems. They were covered in lesions, their skin breaking down, their organs shutting down. Some were already dead, still hooked up to machines, because the staff hadn't bothered to remove them yet. Others were in the process of dying, conscious enough to beg for help with their eyes. The babies inside them were dying too, or being born with catastrophic mutations, or surviving just long enough to be taken away for further experimentation. It was industrial-scale suffering, all in pursuit of replicating the powers that Brenner had managed to create in his original test subjects. Carly managed to use her illusions to evacuate some of the women who were still capable of being moved, creating false corridors and exits that confused the guards long enough for a few women to escape. But she couldn't save them all. Most were too far gone, their bodies too damaged. And by the time the facility lockdown was lifted and the guards regained control, Kaylee was back in captivity, and those women she'd tried to save were recaptured or died during their escape attempts. It was a continuation of what Brenner had done years ago, Dr. Kay carrying on her mentor's work with none of the restraint and twice the cruelty. Because here's the thing that Carly learned during her captivity, the information that changes everything we thought we knew about the Hawkins lab experiments. All of the children in Hawkins lab, including 11 herself, got their powers because Dr. Brenner had infused their biological mothers with Henry Creel's blood. Let me repeat that because it's so important. 11 Carly, all the numbered children, their powers come from Henry Creel's blood being injected into their mothers while they were pregnant. But on Volume 2 we saw that Dr. Kay is testing Kaylee's blood on pregnant women. Most of the children developed various powers. Some got telekinesis, some got pyrokinesis, some got other abilities we never saw because they died during the experiments. But 11 became a perfect replica of Henry's abilities. She got the full package, the strongest telekinesis, the ability to enter people's minds, the power to open dimensional rifts, all of it. She's not just powerful, she's a successful clone of Henry's powers in a different body. This creates an existential nightmare for 11 going into the finale. Dr. Kay is desperate to capture 11 specifically because 11's blood is even better than Carly's for creating new test subjects. Dr. Kay believes that if she can harvest 11's blood, she can create a whole new generation of children with 11's full spectrum of abilities. She could create more people who could control the upside-down creatures, who could open dimensional rifts, who could wage psychic warfare on an unprecedented scale. Even if they defeat Vecna, even if they close the gates and destroy the Upside Down forever, as long as 11 exists, the military will hunt her. They'll capture her, imprison her, use her blood to create weapons. The cycle will never end. There will always be another Dr. Kay, another Dr. Brenner, another government program trying to weaponize powers they don't understand and can't control. That's why Carly proposes something unthinkable, something that makes 11 physically recoil when she first hears it. Carly suggests that she and 11 should stay in the Upside Down when it's destroyed, that they should sacrifice themselves, removing any possibility of their blood ever being used to hurt others or create more children who'll suffer like they did. They will find you, Kaylee tells 11 in this heartbreaking conversation that happens in episode 7. They're sitting in the ruins of the Byers house in the Upside Down, away from the others, having this impossible conversation. No matter where you go, no matter how well you hide, they will find you, and they will create more like us, more like Henry, children who will be twisted into weapons. And it will be our fault for surviving. That's not fair, 11 says, and her voice is breaking. We didn't ask for this. We didn't choose this. I know, Kaylee says gently, but it doesn't matter what's fair. It matters what's true. And the truth is, we're too dangerous to live in a world that wants to use us. 11, understandably, desperately wants to live. She wants to have a normal life with Mike, to go to college, to leave Hawkins and all its trauma behind, and just be a regular person. She spent her entire conscious life being told she's a weapon, a tool, a thing to be used. She's only just started to understand that she's a person who deserves happiness and love and a future. The idea of giving all that up, of dying when she's only just learned what it means to live, is unbearable. But by the end of episode 7, there's this look that passes between 11 and Carly. They're preparing for the final battle, checking equipment and going over the plan one more time. Mike is across the room, and 11 looks at him with so much love and pain. Then she looks back at Carly and nods, just slightly. Not saying yes out loud, but not saying no either. It's ambiguous whether 11 is actually agreeing to the suicide pact or just acknowledging the weight of what Carly is saying. But that moment of connection between them, that understanding of shared burden and shared fate, it suggests that 11 might be seriously considering it. Whether she actually goes through with it, whether she can bring herself to give up Mike and Hopper and Joyce and the life she wants so badly, that's one of the biggest questions going into the finale. Mike doesn't know about this conversation. Hopper doesn't know. If they knew, they'd lose their minds trying to talk 11 out of it. But keeping it secret might be Carly's way of protecting 11 from their influence, giving her the space to make this decision on her own terms without everyone she loves begging her not to do it. It's a moral quagmire with no good answers. Does one person's life matter more than the suffering her continued existence might cause? Does 11 owe the world her sacrifice? Or has she given enough already? These are impossible questions, and the finale is going to have to grapple with them honestly. One of the most intriguing discoveries in Volume 2 comes when Max and Holly are exploring Vecna's memories together, trying to find a way to escape Camazotz and desperately searching for any weakness they can exploit. They're wandering through these twisted corridors of memory and trauma, experiencing Henry's childhood nightmares and adult atrocities when they discover something strange. There's one memory Vecna fears, one place in his mind he won't go voluntarily, a cave, a mine shaft, a place underground where something happened that he doesn't want to remember. It takes Max and Holly hours of careful exploration to find the way in. Vecna's mind has constructed elaborate barriers around this memory, locked doors, impossible mazes, psychic walls that push them away every time they get close. But eventually, through persistence and clever problem-solving, since she needs to find her own way back to her body, and that way is via her Dungeons and Dragons token. Holly, the heroic. What they witness there is crucial to understanding Henry Creel's transformation into Vecna. They see young Henry, just 8 or 9 years old, dressed in his Boy Scout uniform, exploring the woods near his family's new home in Hawkins. This is before the murders, before the darkness fully consumed him, when he was still a relatively normal child, though clearly troubled and isolated. Henry comes across a terrified scientist who's stumbling through the woods, covered in dirt and blood, clutching a silver briefcase like his life depends on it. The man is paranoid, wild-eyed, clearly traumatized by something. He's muttering to himself about mistakes and consequences, about things that weren't meant to be found. When Henry approaches, trying to help because that's what Boy Scouts are supposed to do, the scientist doesn't see a child offering assistance. He sees a threat, a plant, someone sent to retrieve him and the case. "Who sent you, Kaikuo?" he demands, grabbing Henry by the shoulders hard enough to bruise. "Was it Morrison? Did Morrison send you?" Young Henry, confused and frightened, tries to explain that he's just lost, that he was looking for his way back to the troop, but the scientist doesn't believe him. In his paranoid, traumatized state, he pulls out a gun. He actually points a gun at a child. Henry tries to fight back, tries to grab for the gun, and in the struggle, the weapon discharges. The bullet goes through Henry's hand, a through-and-through wound that would have required surgery and left permanent scarring. The pain and shock send young Henry into a kind of fugue state, and something dark surfaces in him. Something that might have always been there, or might have been implanted when he visited the abyss. We still don't know for sure. What we do see is Henry fighting for control of the gun with a strength and determination that seems inhuman for a child his age. The scientist is an adult man, but Henry overpowers him, driven by pain and fear, and something darker. When the gun is no longer a factor, when it's been knocked away into the undergrowth, Henry doesn't run. He doesn't call for help. He picks up a rock and he bludgeons the man to death with it, striking again and again and again, long after the scientist has stopped moving. The memory shows Henry standing over the body afterward, covered in blood, breathing hard, and then noticing the briefcase. He picks it up, opens it, and his eyes go wide at whatever he sees inside. The memory goes fuzzy at that point, Vecna's mind literally blurring the contents, refusing to let even his own consciousness see clearly what was in that case. But Max and Holly were able to see enough to know it contained stolen technology from a government experiment. Technology that had accidentally sent people to what the scientist's colleagues called Dimension X, which is another name for the abyss. This connects directly to the stage play Stranger Things, The First Shadow, which explores Henry's childhood in much greater detail. According to the play, which is considered canon by the Duffers, Henry's first encounter with Dimension X happened during this time period, around 1959. He was transported there somehow, possibly by technology he found in that briefcase, possibly through a natural rift, possibly through psychic abilities he was already developing. When he came back, he was different, changed, corrupted by something he encountered in that dimension of chaos and evil. The show hasn't revealed what exactly Henry took from that briefcase yet. What piece of technology or information was valuable enough for a scientist to kill and die for? But it's clearly connected to how Henry got his powers and how the Mind Flayer came to influence him. Was it a device that opens portals? A map to dimensional weak points? Some kind of amplifier for latent psychic abilities? We don't know, and that's a mystery the finale will need to answer. What we do know is that this memory is Vecna's shame. The moment he became a murderer, the moment he stopped being Henry Creel and started becoming the monster. That's why he's buried it so deep in his mind, surrounded it with so many defensive barriers. It's the crack in his armor, the weak point in his consciousness, the place where he's most vulnerable because he can't face what he did and what it turned him into. Max and Holly believe they can use this. If they can force Vecna to confront this memory during the psychic battle, if they can trap him in that cave in his mind and make him relive that moment, it might create an opening for 11 to strike. It might be the distraction they need to give them a fighting chance against someone as powerful as Vecna has become. So here's how they're planning to win, and honestly, it's simultaneously brilliant and terrifying in its complexity and all the ways it could go catastrophically wrong. The plan comes from Steve Harrington of all people, and honestly, that's perfect. Steve has grown so much from the popular jock who cared more about his hair than anything else. He's become the strategist, the protector, the guy who thinks 3 steps ahead because he's already lost too many people and refuses to lose anyone else. The group calls his plan Operation Beanstalk, named after Jack and the Beanstalk because it involves climbing impossibly high to reach something dangerous. The core problem they're facing is that the abyss exists physically above the upside down, separated by what's basically an impossible-to-reach ceiling. Think of it like this. The upside down is one dimension. The abyss is another dimension, directly above it, and there's no natural way to get from one to the other. 11 can't just project her consciousness that far without serious amplification. The distance isn't physical distance in any conventional sense. It's dimensional distance, requiring her to push her consciousness across the barrier between 2 realities. Even at full strength, even using the isolation tank that amplifies her abilities, 11 probably can't reach far enough to engage Vecna directly in the abyss. She'd burn herself out trying, or worse, she'd get stranded between dimensions with no way back to her body. And if they can't reach Vecna, they can't stop him from enacting his plan, whatever that plan actually is. Steve's solution is counterintuitive and brilliant. Let Vecna do exactly what he wants. Let him pull the dimensions together. Let him merge the abyss with the upside down by drawing them closer together. Vecna's ultimate plan, as far as they've been able to figure out from Holly's reports and Will's sensing of the hive mind, involves using the 13 children as psychic amplifiers to cast a spell that will merge dimensions. He's going to use their combined power to pull the abyss down toward the upside down, which is still tethered to Earth through all those rifts and gates. Once the abyss is close enough, once the barriers between dimensions are thin enough, he can bring through the Mind Flayer and all his monsters without needing specific gates or portals. The entire planet would become a transition zone between Earth and the abyss, with Vecna and the Mind Flayer ruling over all of it. The group's plan is to let Vecna start this process. Let him initiate the spell. Let him begin pulling the dimensions together, but then ambush him mid-process and interrupt the spell before it can complete. Here's where it gets really clever. Once Vecna starts the spell and the dimensions begin moving together, the geography will shift. The ceiling separating the upside down from the abyss will descend. The impossible distance will become merely difficult, and if they time it perfectly, one of the tallest structures in the upside down's version of Hawkins, the Squawk Radio Tower, a massive transmission tower that was built in the 1970s and still stands in the frozen-in-time version of Hawkins, should poke through one of the rifts Vecna creates. The tower is over 400 feet tall, one of those massive radio transmission towers with the red aviation warning lights. In the normal world, it's still operational, broadcasting AM radio across most of Indiana. In the upside down, it's this silent, rusted monument, covered in vines and decay, but still structurally sound. And it's going to become their ladder to the abyss. But here's the thing. 11 won't be fighting from Earth. She won't even be fighting from the safety of Hawkins proper. She'll be using the immersion tank that's located in the Upside Down's version of Hawkins' lab. The same tank she used as a kid, still there in that abandoned facility, sitting right underneath where Vecna's lair will be once the abyss descends. The tank is still functional, still filled with salt water that's become stagnant and gross over the years, but can be filtered and refreshed. It will amplify 11's abilities the way it did when she was a child, allowing her to project her consciousness further and with more power than she could manage on her own. And the location is perfect, close enough to where Vecna will be that 11 can reach him without burning herself out, but hidden enough that he might not notice her presence until it's too late. But she's not going in alone. This is crucial. Max will guide her through Vecna's mind, using all that knowledge she gained while trapped in Camazotz. Max will be in Hawkins Hospital. Her body still recovering, but her mind sharp and ready. She'll navigate for 11, calling out directions through their psychic link, warning her about traps and defenses, guiding her to the weak points in Vecna's consciousness. And Carly will join 11 in the tank, entering Vecna's mind alongside her to provide backup. Carly's illusions could be crucial against someone as powerful as Vecna, creating distractions, manipulating his perception of the battlefield, making him see threats that aren't there or miss threats that are. She can create phantom versions of 11 to confuse him, or conjure up his worst fears and memories to destabilize his focus. Together, the three of them form a psychic strike team. 11 is the hammer, the pure power that can hurt Vecna. Carly is the knife, the misdirection and psychological warfare. Max is the eyes, the intelligence that makes them effective. It's the perfect combination of abilities, the only combination that might actually work against someone as formidable as Vecna has become. Will Byers can't join the psychic fight. His connection to the hive mind makes it too dangerous for him to enter Vecna's consciousness directly. Vecna might be able to possess him, turn him into a weapon against his friends. But Will provide intel from the outside, using his connection to sense what Vecna is doing and warn the team if something goes wrong or if the plan needs to adjust on the fly. If they manage to ambush Vecna and stop his spell, even temporarily, the dimensional merge will halt. The abyss will freeze in place, no longer descending but also not ascending back to its original position. It'll be close enough to the upside down that the radio tower creates a physical bridge between the two realms. Not a comfortable bridge, not a safe bridge, but a traversable one. That's when the rescue team goes into action. Steve leads this part of the operation because he's the best fighter they have, the most experienced at navigating hostile territory and protecting vulnerable people. He'll take Robin, Nancy, Jonathan, and Hopper up the tower. They'll climb the 400+ feet through the Upside Down's toxic atmosphere, wearing makeshift breathing apparatus and climbing harnesses that Dustin and Erica engineered from hardware store supplies and science fair projects. When they reach the top, they'll find themselves at the edge of a rift leading into the abyss. They'll have to make a jump, a literal leap of faith into another dimension, landing in Vecna's lair where the pain tree holds the children. Then comes the hard part, freeing Holly and the other 12 children from those biological prisons, ripping out the vines while the children are conscious and screaming, keeping them calm enough to move while they're disoriented and traumatized. They'll have to carry or support the children back to the rift, back across that jump, back down 400 feet of tower, while the children are barely able to walk. All while Vecna is presumably trying to stop them, sending demogorgons or other creatures, or using his powers to collapse the tower, or seal the rifts. But here's the really dangerous part, the element of the plan that makes everyone queasy when they think about it too hard. On their way out, before they make that final descent, the rescue team has to plant a bomb next to the exotic matter. Mike engineered the bomb himself, working for 3 days straight with barely any sleep, combining conventional explosives with some kind of electromagnetic pulse device that Dustin helped him calculate the specifications for. It's not designed to destroy the exotic matter directly. That would probably take a nuclear weapon at minimum. Instead, it's designed to destabilize the exotic matter, to disturb its structure enough that it can no longer hold the wormhole open. And Mike, being Mike, built in a unique trigger mechanism. The bomb will only detonate when a specific record stops playing. He won't tell anyone which record it is, not even Nancy, because he doesn't want anyone making decisions about when to trigger the bomb based on who's made it out and who hasn't. The record is his choice, his secret, and presumably something that has deep personal meaning related to his relationship with 11 or his memories of the group. When the bomb goes off, the entire wormhole structure collapses. The exotic matter destabilizes, the bridge between dimensions falls apart, and the abyss gets severed from our reality. Everything in the Upside Down when this happens, the Mind Flayer, the Demogorgons, all of Vecna's monsters, gets trapped on the other side, forever, sealed away in the abyss with no way back. At least, that's the theory. That's the plan. But there are so many ways this could fail. What if 11 can't stop Vecna's spell? What if he's too powerful, even with Carly's help and Max's guidance? The dimensions would complete their merge, and Vecna would win before the rescue team even makes it up the tower. What if the dimensional merge happens too fast? What if Vecna accelerates the spell once he realizes he's under attack? The tower might not line up properly with the rifts. The rescue team could end up stranded, unable to reach the abyss or unable to get back down. What if someone gets trapped on the wrong side when the bomb goes off? What if one of the children can't be moved fast enough? Or someone gets injured on the way down? Or Vecna manages to capture one of the rescuers? The bomb doesn't care about stragglers. Once that record stops, once Mike's trigger condition is met, the explosion happens and everyone still in the Upside Down is stuck there when it collapses. The plan requires perfect coordination between people scattered across multiple dimensions and multiple locations. 11 and Carly in the tank in the Upside Down's version of Hawkins' lab. Max guiding them from her hospital bed in real Hawkins. Will monitoring from his position at the buyer's house using his connection to the hive mind. The rescue team climbing into the abyss. Mike somewhere safe with his record player, ready to stop the music when he judges everyone is out. One breakdown in communication, one person out of position, one miscalculation of timing, and the whole thing falls apart. People die or get trapped in the abyss, or the wormhole stays open and Vecna wins anyway. And then there's the suicide pact. Even if everything goes right, even if they rescue everyone and plant the bomb and get back to safety, Kali has convinced herself, and possibly Eleven, that they should stay in the Upside Down when it explodes. That they should sacrifice themselves to end the cycle of military exploitation forever. If Eleven agrees to this, if she decides her death is necessary to save others from the fate of being harvested and weaponized, then Mike's entire plan becomes a tragedy. He'll have engineered the perfect rescue, gotten everyone out safely, and still lost the person he loves most. The person he built that whole elaborate timing mechanism for. The person he chose that specific record for. All of it meaningless because Eleven chose to stay behind. The finale is going to answer whether Mike's optimistic view that they can all survive and live happily ever after is right, or whether Kaylee's pessimistic realism that Eleven will never be safe as long as she's alive is the truth. And honestly, I don't know which outcome would hurt more. Now let's talk about what might be the biggest twist of all, the theory that would recontextualize not just this season, but the entire series. What if Vecna isn't actually the main villain? What if he never was? What if everything we've been watching, all the terror and trauma and loss, has been orchestrated by something older and more malevolent than Henry Creel could ever be? We've spent 2 full seasons building up Henry Creel/Vecna as the ultimate big bad. The show has positioned him as the source of all the evil plaguing Hawkins, the mastermind behind the Upside Down's invasion of our reality. But there's growing evidence that Vecna himself might be a puppet in a much larger game, and the real villain pulling the strings from the shadows is the Mind Flayer. The strongest evidence for this theory comes from The First Shadow, the official Broadway prequel play that the Duffers have confirmed is canon to the main storyline. In the play, we learn that when Henry Creel was just 8 years old in 1959, he went missing for several days in Nevada. His parents reported him missing, search parties went out, and then he just reappeared with no clear memory of where he'd been or what had happened to him. But the play reveals what really happened. Henry was transported to Dimension X, the abyss. Something drew him there, or he stumbled through a natural rift, or he was taken by something we don't fully understand yet. While he was in that dimension of chaos and malevolence, he encountered the Mind Flayer for the first time. And the Mind Flayer didn't just scare him. It didn't just observe him. It possessed him. It infiltrated his consciousness, planted itself in his mind like a seed of darkness that would grow over the years. It corrupted him from the inside out, nurturing and amplifying the worst parts of his personality while suppressing his empathy and conscience. It gave him his powers, but those powers came with strings attached. They came with the Mind Flayer's influence, its guidance, its goals. This means the Mind Flayer existed long before Henry Creel. It was already an ancient, powerful entity in the abyss, waiting for someone it could use as a vessel in our reality. Henry wasn't the source of evil. He was the tool through which existing evil could manifest. Think about the implications of this. Everything Henry did after that encounter, killing his family, developing his powers, the experiments at Hawkins' lab, becoming Vecna, all of it might have been the Mind Flayer's influence, pushing him in certain directions, not controlling him completely, not puppeting him like a mindless zombie, but subtly shaping his decisions and desires until Vecna became the perfect weapon for interdimensional conquest. The memory that Max and Holly witness, young Henry killing that scientist and opening the briefcase, happens right around this same time period, possibly even the same year. Whatever was in that briefcase is connected to Henry's transformation, to the moment he became something more than human, and it's likely connected to the Mind Flayer's influence over him, possibly even containing technology that strengthened the connection or gave the Mind Flayer more control. If the Mind Flayer really is the one in ultimate control, if Vecna is essentially an extremely powerful but ultimately subservient agent, that would explain so much about what we've seen. Why Vecna's been so focused on merging dimensions instead of just conquering Earth directly. Because he's trying to open a doorway for his master to enter our reality in its full terrible power. why he needs the children's powers amplified in such a specific way, because the Mind Flayer needs that specific configuration of energy to cross dimensional barriers. Why everything he's doing seems designed to bring the Abyss closer to Earth, because that's literally his mission, the purpose the Mind Flayer gave him decades ago. It's very Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine, honestly, and I don't think that's an accident given how much the Duffers love Star Wars. Vecna would be the tragic villain, powerful and terrifying, and seemingly unstoppable, but ultimately still serving a greater evil. The Mind Flayer would be the true threat, the ancient cosmic horror that's been manipulating events from the shadows through multiple puppets and proxies. And here's something that supports this theory. The Mind Flayer has been weirdly quiet this season. We've barely seen it in its full shadow monster form, despite it being such a prominent threat in previous seasons. That absence feels intentional, not like the Duffers forgot about it, but like they're saving it for something big. In warfare and strategy, smart tacticians conserve their forces for the decisive battle. They don't commit everything to preliminary skirmishes. They wait for the right moment, the perfect opening, and then they strike with everything they have. The Mind Flayer might be doing exactly that, conserving its power, staying hidden in the Abyss, waiting for Vecna to create the perfect conditions for it to enter our reality in full force. We've seen pieces of the Mind Flayer, fragments that pass through the gates. We've seen it possess Will, possess Billy, create the spider monster from melted people, but we've never seen its true form, its full power unleashed in our dimension. What if that's the finale's real battle? What if defeating Vecna is just the preliminary fight, and then the real horror begins when the Mind Flayer itself comes through? What makes this theory so compelling is how it would reframe the entire series. We thought 11 created the problem when she sent Henry to Dimension X during the massacre at Hawkins' lab in 1979. We thought she accidentally opened the gates, unleashed the monsters, started this whole nightmare. The guilt of that has been weighing on her for years, this sense that she's responsible for all the death and suffering that followed. But if the Mind Flayer was already there in the Abyss, already ancient and evil and waiting for an opportunity, then 11 didn't create the villain. She just sent Henry Creel back to his master, back to the entity that had been shaping him since childhood. The gates would have opened eventually anyway, through Henry or through someone else, the Mind Flayer corrupted. 11 just accelerated the timeline. That would be a kind of absolution for her, a release from the guilt she's been carrying. She's not responsible for creating this evil. She's the weapon that can destroy it. It would also set up a possible redemption arc for Henry Creel, and this is where things get really interesting. If he's essentially a victim of the Mind Flayer's corruption since he was 8 years old, if he's been under its control or influence for his entire life, then there's room for him to break free. There's room for him to turn against his master in a final act of defiance, to reclaim his humanity even at the cost of his life. Some fans have pointed out something subtle but significant. The memory version of Henry in Camazotz, the one that appears as Mr. Whatsit, another A Wrinkle in Time reference, actually seems to be trying to help the children in subtle ways. He can't openly defy Vecna because Mr. Whatsit is part of Vecna's consciousness and therefore limited by what Vecna's mind will allow. But he can leave clues, create small inconsistencies in the mindscape that help Max and Holly navigate, subtly guide them toward the information they need to escape. That split between the human, Henry, and the monster, Vecna, could be the key to everything. Maybe Henry's consciousness is still in there somewhere, trapped and suppressed, but not completely gone. Maybe he's been trying to sabotage Vecna from within, creating weaknesses and openings without the Mind Flayer noticing. And maybe, in the final battle, when 11 enters Vecna's mind to fight him, she'll find Henry there waiting, ready to help her destroy the monster he's become. It would be a powerful moment if 11, the person who sent Henry to the Abyss in the first place, becomes the person who frees him from the Mind Flayer's control. A kind of circle completing itself, an act of mercy towards someone who is both victim and perpetrator. Of course, redemption doesn't mean Henry survives. He's done terrible things, killed innocent people, caused immeasurable suffering. Even if he was being influenced or controlled, there are consequences for those actions. But there's a difference between dying as a villain who chose evil and dying as someone who fought against the darkness controlling them, even if they couldn't win that fight until the very end. Whether Vecna is puppet or partner, villain or victim, the Mind Flayer's role in this finale feels absolutely massive. And if this theory is right, if the Duffers have been playing the long game all along, then the final battle isn't going to be about defeating one powerful enemy. It's going to be about facing the source of all the darkness that's plagued Hawkins since November 6th, 1983. It's going to be about confronting an ancient evil that has shaped this entire story from the shadows, patient and ruthless and utterly inhuman in its goals. The Mind Flayer doesn't care about human concerns like revenge or power or recognition. It doesn't care if Vecna lives or dies, if the children suffer or survive. It only cares about expanding, consuming, spreading its influence across dimensions until everything exists in that same state of chaos and malevolence that defines the abyss. That's the real horror. Not a villain with understandable motivations, but a force of pure destructive will that can't be reasoned with, or appealed to, or understood in human terms. Cosmic horror in the truest sense, something so alien and vast that the best we can hope for is to push it back for a while, not to truly defeat it forever. And if that's what the finale is building toward, then Operation Beanstalk might be humanity's only chance. Not to destroy the Mind Flayer, that might be impossible, but to sever its connection to our reality, to close the doors and lock them permanently so that it can never reach us again. Here's the question that's keeping everyone up at night, the one we've been dreading since we first saw that Volume 2 ended with everyone still alive. Who's going to die in the finale? The surprising thing about Volume 2, the thing that made me genuinely shocked when the final episode ended, is that nobody died, not a single main character. Not even side characters like Murray or Dimitri, who felt like they were being set up for heroic sacrifices. Everyone made it through all 3 episodes intact. That's actually shocking for Stranger Things, especially this late in the final season. The Duffers have trained us to expect loss, to know that someone we care about isn't making it out when the stakes are this high. But Volume 2 gave us a reprieve, a moment to breathe, and hope that maybe, just maybe, everyone could survive this. Except we know better, don't we? That reprieve just means the finale's going to hit even harder. The emotional impact is going to be devastating because we've had time to believe everyone might make it, to lower our defenses and invest fully in these characters' happiness. The Duffer Brothers have a pattern when it comes to death. They kill off beloved characters in ways that serve the narrative and deepen the emotional stakes. Barb in Season 1, showing us that this show wasn't afraid to kill sympathetic characters and that no one was truly safe. Bob in Season 2, the heroic sacrifice that gave Joyce and the kids time to escape while devastating us with the loss of someone genuinely good and kind. Billy in Season 3, getting a redemption death that showed there was humanity in him despite everything. Eddie in Season 4, another heroic sacrifice that gutted Dustin and the entire fandom. Every season, someone we care about doesn't make it out. And this is the finale, the end of the entire series, which means the stakes are higher than they've ever been. The emotional weight needs to match the scale of the conflict. Someone significant is going to die, and it's going to hurt. The most talked about death theory, the one that's been dominating Reddit threads and Twitter discourse since Volume 2 dropped, involves Steve Harrington. And honestly, as much as it breaks my heart to say this, the evidence is compelling and the narrative logic is sound. Steve's character arc has been perfect, one of the best redemption arcs in television history. He went from being the popular jock, the arrogant boyfriend who cared more about his reputation than about people, to being the group's protector, the selfless hero who throws himself into danger without hesitation to keep the kids safe. He's become the guy who always shows up, always puts himself between the people he loves and the monsters trying to hurt them. That transformation is beautiful. It's also, in storytelling terms, the exact kind of arc that ends in a heroic sacrifice. In episode 6, Steve has this conversation with Nancy, where he tells her about his dream for the future. He wants 6 kids, this whole bustling household full of life and noise and love. He's got it all planned out, the RV for road trips, teaching them to swim, taking them camping. He talks about it with such genuine hope and enthusiasm, like he's finally figured out what would make him truly happy. And that's a death flag, if I've ever seen one. In storytelling, when a character starts talking about their plans for after the crisis is over, when they share their hopes and dreams for a future they're working toward, that's usually the writers telling you, this character isn't going to make it. They're not going to get that happy ending they've been dreaming about. The dream exists to make their death hurt more, to give weight to what's being lost. Plus, there's Dustin. The show specifically had a scene in Volume 2 where Dustin breaks down talking to Steve about Eddie's death, about how losing Eddie nearly destroyed him, and how he can't lose Steve too. Dustin literally says, "I can't lose you, not after Eddie. I can't do it again." That scene exists for a reason. The Duffers don't waste dialogue. When they have a character explicitly state that losing someone would break them, that's usually foreshadowing that they're going to have to face exactly that. If Steve dies saving Dustin, or saving the group during the climb up the radio tower, or the escape from the abyss, it would complete his redemption arc in the most devastating way possible. He'd go out as the hero he's become, the protector who gave everything to keep the people he loves safe. His death would have meaning and weight and purpose. Dustin would be destroyed. Nancy would carry that guilt and grief. The whole group would feel the loss of someone who'd become so central to their survival and their family. It would hurt in all the ways a character death should hurt. Not just sad, but meaningful, earned, a genuine loss that changes the survivors. And yet, I keep hoping I'm wrong. I keep hoping the Duffers will subvert our expectations and let Steve live to get that family he's dreaming about. Because hasn't he earned it? Hasn't he given enough already? Does his redemption really require his death, or can it be complete with him getting to be happy? I don't know, but betting odds have Steve at 2-1 for dying in the finale, which is really high for a main character. The show is setting up the possibility very deliberately, and we need to prepare ourselves for the likelihood that Steve Harrington doesn't make it out of the Upside Down alive. But the deaths the show is most explicitly setting up, the ones they've been discussing on screen with brutal honesty, are 11 and Carly. The suicide pact conversation in episode 7 wasn't subtle or metaphorical. It was Carly laying out a clear logical argument for why their continued existence is dangerous, and 11 absorbing that argument with visible conflict and pain. Carly's reasoning is sound, even if it's heartbreaking. As long as 11 and Carly are alive, as long as their blood can create more superpowered children, they will be hunted. The military will never stop coming for them, even if they blow up Dr. K's lab, even if they kill everyone involved in the current program, more people will come. More scientists, more military officers, more governments wanting to weaponize psychic abilities. The cycle will never end. There will always be another Brenner, another K, another facility where children suffer because powerful people want to create weapons. And 11 and Carly, by existing, by surviving, are enabling that cycle. Their blood is the key to creating more victims, more children who'll be twisted into weapons they never asked to become. The only way to truly end the cycle, the only way to make absolutely sure that no more children are created this way, is for 11 and Carly to die. To remove themselves from the equation permanently, to make their blood unavailable, make replication impossible, close the door on this line of experimentation forever. It's brutal utilitarian logic. 2 lives to save countless others from suffering the same fate. But 11 is 19 years old. She's only just started to live, only just begun to understand what it means to be a person rather than a weapon. She's in love with Mike Wheeler, has a family with Hopper and Joyce, has friends and connections, and a future full of possibilities. The idea of giving all that up, of dying when she's only just learned what happiness feels like, is unbearable. She wants to live so desperately. She deserves to live. But Carly's argument keeps echoing in her mind. They will find you, and they will create more, like Henry. The show even foreshadowed this possibility visually. There's a shot in episode 5 where Eleven and Kaylee pull up to a location in a hearse, a vehicle specifically associated with death and funerals. That image wasn't accidental, and the season trailer used Queen's Who Wants to Live Forever prominently while showing Eleven using her powers and looking conflicted. Combine that with Eleven's Christ-like parallels throughout the series, the self-sacrificial savior figure who bears the sins and burdens of others, and it's very easy to imagine the finale ending with her choosing to give up her life to save others, to end the cycle of exploitation by making herself unavailable for exploitation. But here's what I think, and here's where I'm going to plant my flag in prediction territory. I don't think the Duffers will actually kill Eleven. I think they'll subvert this expectation in a specific way. The Duffers have said repeatedly in interviews that they don't do deaths for shock value. They've said they want deaths to serve the story, to have meaning and purpose beyond just making the audience sad. Killing Eleven, after everything she's been through, after finally finding a family, after learning what love means, after fighting so hard to be more than a weapon, would that really serve the story? Or would it just be tragedy for tragedy's sake? I think Eleven might lose her powers instead of her life. If pushing herself too hard in the final battle burns out her abilities permanently, if the strain of fighting Vecna and the Mind Flayer literally destroys the parts of her brain that generate psychic powers, then she'd no longer be valuable to the military. Her blood would be useless for creating new subjects. She could live a normal life with Mike and Hopper and Joyce without constantly looking over her shoulder. But she'd lose the thing that's been part of her identity since birth. She'd lose the abilities that have defined her, that have made her feel powerful and useful and special. That's its own kind of death, the death of who she's been, the death of Jane who has powers. Even if Jane the person survives physically, it would be a bittersweet ending. Eleven gets to live, gets to have that normal life she's been dreaming about. But she loses part of herself in the process, has to learn who she is without the powers that have been her entire identity. She'd be free, but that freedom comes at a cost. Carly might make a different choice. Carly has been imprisoned and exploited longer than Eleven. She doesn't have the same support system, the same hope for a normal life. If Carly chooses to stay in the Upside Down when it collapses, choosing death to ensure no one can ever use her again, that would be tragic, but in character, and it would hurt because we've only just gotten to know her better this season. But I hope, that Eleven survives. That the girl who started this story alone in a hospital gown ends it surrounded by people who love her, alive and free, and ready to figure out who she can be without powers. Will dying would bring everything full circle in a way that's almost too perfect. November 6th, 1983. Will Byers vanished. That's episode 1, scene 1. The inciting incident for everything that's happened across 5 seasons. The entire story began with Will disappearing into the Upside Down, and there's something poetic, in a tragic way, about Will's story ending with a sacrifice that closes the gates forever. He could have a hero moment, using his connection to the hive mind to give the others crucial information or to hold Vecna's attention while Eleven strikes. He could choose to stay behind, to be the one who ensures the bomb goes off at the right moment or who holds the gate open long enough for everyone else to escape. His death would bookend the series perfectly, and Will has established through his character arc that he's brave enough to make that sacrifice. He's no longer the frightened kid who spent a week hiding in the Upside Down. He's grown into someone strong and courageous, someone who understands the stakes and would give his life without hesitation if it meant protecting the people he loves. But I don't think the Duffers will actually do it. I don't think they'll kill Will. Here's why. Will has suffered too much already. He's been the victim more than any other character. He was trapped in the Upside Down for a week in season 1, coughing up slugs and traumatized. He was possessed by the Mind Flayer in season 2, his body and mind violated in the most intimate way possible. He spent years dealing with PTSD, with nightmares, with the sense that he's different and damaged and might never be normal again. And he's only just come out to his friends and family. He's only just taken that brave step toward living authentically, toward being honest about who he is. He's finally starting to heal from all that trauma, finally beginning to believe he might have a future worth living for. Killing him off after all of that feels too cruel, even for stranger things. It would feel like the story is punishing Will for surviving, for being the victim, for having the audacity to want happiness after years of suffering. That's not the kind of message I think the Duffers want to send. Will is going to get his hero moment. He's going to help defeat Vecna using his connection to the hive mind, proving he's not just a victim, but a warrior who can turn his trauma into strength. But then he's going to survive. He's going to finally be free from the Upside Down's hold on him, free to live his life without monsters and nightmares, free to figure out who he is when he's not defined by what's been done to him. He's earned that. He deserves that. And I think the Duffers know it. Some characters feel almost certainly safe, protected by narrative logic and the needs of the story's conclusion. Dustin Henderson is the emotional heart of the group and the audience surrogate in many ways. He's also already grieving Eddie. The Duffers aren't cruel enough to kill Dustin too, and they're probably not cruel enough to make him lose Steve, after explicitly setting up that Steve is the person Dustin can't bear to lose. Dustin survives to tell the story, to remember the friends who didn't make it, to carry forward the memory of everything they accomplished together. Joyce Byers deserves to make it after everything she's been through. She's lost Bob, nearly lost Will multiple times, fought through dimensions and across continents to protect her family. Let Joyce have peace. Let her retire from monster fighting and live quietly with Hopper. She's earned that ending. Robin Buckley hasn't had her full hero moment yet. Her character arc feels incomplete in ways that suggest she's surviving to the end. She's going to come out to her parents, going to find romantic love, going to have that whole storyline that's been building throughout this season. You don't set all that up just to kill her off in the finale. Mike Wheeler is stepping back into his confident leader role in Volume 2, which suggests he survives to complete that arc. Plus, he's the one who built the bomb and chose the record trigger. He needs to be there to see his plan through. He needs to live to love Eleven, with or without her powers, and to help her figure out who she can be in a world without monsters. Lucas Sinclair needs to be there when Max fully recovers, which seems like it's going to happen post-finale. Their love story isn't finished yet, and Lucas has been so devoted to Max throughout her ordeal that it would be beyond cruel to have him survive, only to die right when she's coming back to him. Jim Hopper probably survives too, despite his recurring tendency to try sacrificing himself. We've got evidence of him in an epilogue scene. Set photos from filming showed him in his old police chief uniform, talking to Mike outside a theatre, showing Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which came out in 1989. That's 2 full years after the main events of Season 5 are taking place. If those set photos are legitimate and that scene makes it into the final cut, then Hopper makes it through the finale and lives long enough to get back to his old job and his old life. The epilogue itself is looking increasingly likely. That Indiana Jones detail is too specific to ignore, too deliberate to be a fake out. If there's a scene set in 1989, that's a proper epilogue showing us the aftermath, showing us where everyone ends up after the dust settles and the wounds begin to heal. An epilogue would serve multiple purposes. It would let the Duffers show the long-term consequences of the finale without rushing through everything in the immediate aftermath. We could see Hawkins rebuilding, see the scars left by the dimensional merge attempt, see how the town processes and memorializes what happened. We could see the kids, not kids anymore, young adults now, growing up, moving on, figuring out who they are in a world without monsters. We could see who's still together and who's moved away, who stayed in Hawkins to help rebuild and who left to start fresh somewhere without those traumatic associations. Who's still close friends and who's drifted apart the way people do after high school when life takes them in different directions. It would also let the Duffers avoid the trap of trying to wrap everything up perfectly in the moment the threat ends. Real life doesn't work that way. Trauma doesn't just resolve the moment the danger is gone. People need time to heal, to process, to figure out what normal even means anymore, when normal now includes the knowledge that other dimensions exist and monsters are real, and people can move things with their minds. A time jump acknowledges that healing is a process, not an event. It gives the characters and the audience space to breathe, to let the intensity of the finale settle before we see where everyone lands. But here's what makes an epilogue bittersweet. We'd be saying goodbye twice. First, we'd say goodbye to the characters as they are in 1987, fighting that final battle against Vecna and the Mind Flayer, pouring everything they have into one last confrontation. Then we'd say goodbye to them again in 1989 or beyond, seeing who they've become after the dust has settled, who they are when they're no longer defined by being monster fighters. There's something sad about that, even if everyone we love survives, because the kids we met in Season 1 are already gone. They've grown up. They can't go back to the innocence and simplicity of those early days. Mike and Lucas and Dustin and Will were 11 and 12 years old when this started. They're 19 and 20 now, adults with adult responsibilities and adult understanding of how complicated and painful life can be. That's what Stranger Things has really been about from the beginning, growing up and leaving childhood behind. The upside down and the monsters and the dimensions, all of that is the framework, the structure the story hangs on. But the emotional core has always been about these kids losing their innocence, facing impossible situations, having to become adults before they're ready. The finale is going to force them to leave that chapter of their lives behind forever. Even if they win, even if they close the gates and save everyone, they can't go back to being the kids they were. Too much has happened. Too much has been lost. They've seen and done things that separate them from normal people, experiences that will mark them for the rest of their lives. The epilogue would show us how they carry that forward, how they integrate these experiences into their adult identities, whether they talk about it or keep silent, whether the friendships survive or evolve into something different, whether Hawkins remains home or becomes a place they have to leave in order to move on. It's a bittersweet ending, even in the best case scenario. Growth and change always are. Before we get to my actual predictions for how the finale plays out, let's talk about some of the wilder theories circulating in the fandom. These probably won't happen, but they're interesting to consider, and they show how deeply people are thinking about this story. This one's clever and fits thematically, even if it might be a bit too on the nose for the duffers to actually use. The theory goes like this: 11 is number 11, Carly is number 8. Will, who now has powers connected to Vecna and the hive mind, could represent number 1, the first victim, the first person connected to the Upside Down, the one who started everything on November 6th, 1983. Add them together, 11 plus 8 plus 1 equals 20. In Dungeons & Dragons, rolling a natural 20 on a 20-sided die is a critical success, the best possible outcome. It's an automatic hit in combat, often with extra damage or spectacular effects. Rolling a 20 means you've succeeded in the most dramatic way possible. The theory suggests that combining all their powers, 11's telekinesis and dimensional abilities, Carly's illusions, Will's connection to the hive mind, will give them the critical hit they need to win. That their powers together will create exactly the right combination to defeat Vecna and the Mind Flayer, achieving a perfect success against impossible odds. It's clever. It fits the show's constant D&D references and the way the kids have always used D and D terminology to understand and explain what's happening to them. And there's something poetic about their final victory being a natural 20, a perfect roll that turns the tide when everything seems lost. But I'm not sure the duffers will be quite that literal about it. They tend to use D&D as metaphor and framework, rather than as actual mechanics. Still, wouldn't it be amazing if one of the characters explicitly calls it that in the finale? If Dustin, watching everything come together, just says, "We got a nat 20 with this mixture of relief and disbelief," this one makes me anxious even considering it. Some fans think the entire series might be revealed as a D&D campaign the boys have been playing, that all the monsters and dimensions and trauma have been metaphors and storytelling rather than actual events. The evidence for this theory The show opens with the kids playing D&D in Mike's basement. It uses D&D terminology constantly throughout all 5 seasons, and all the monsters are pulled directly from D&D lore. Demogorgons, mind flayers, Vecna himself. What if the whole series has been an elaborate campaign, and the finale reveals we've been watching their imaginations the whole time? But no, absolutely not. I refuse to believe the Duffers would do this to us. This would undermine 5 seasons of emotional investment by suggesting none of it was real. That Barb didn't really die, Bob didn't sacrifice himself, Billy didn't get a redemption arc, Eddie didn't save Dustin. That all the trauma and growth and love was just kids playing pretend in a basement. It would be the ultimate betrayal of the audience's trust. It would make every emotional moment hollow in retrospect. It would turn genuine character development into fictional character development within fiction, adding a layer of distance that would ruin the entire emotional journey. The Duffers aren't that cynical. They're not going to pull a Saint, Elsewhere, or Newhart ending. The story is real within its own universe, and it matters because it's real to these characters. What I could see, what would actually be lovely, is the kids returning to Mike's basement after everything is over and playing one more campaign together. A bookend showing that even after everything they've been through, even after becoming adults and facing genuine horrors, they're still the same kids at heart. They still find joy in rolling dice and telling stories and being together. That would be a beautiful way to end the series. Not revealing it was all a game, but showing that the game still matters to them, that their friendship and shared imagination survived everything they faced. A Wrinkle in Time has been such a prominent reference point this season that it's worth considering whether time manipulation might play a role in the finale. The book isn't just about alternate dimensions, it's about tessering, the ability to wrinkle time and space, to take shortcuts through the universe by folding reality. The show has dropped hints about time throughout its run. Mr. Clark's flea and acrobat analogy from Season 1, explaining how dimensions might connect, looks suspiciously similar to illustrations from A Wrinkle in Time. The Upside Down is frozen on November 6th, 1983. Time itself stopped there, on the day Will was taken. Holly's favourite book being A Wrinkle in Time, her mindscape being named after something from that book. It all feels potentially significant. Maybe the finale involves Eleven or Holly actually manipulating time, not just space. Maybe they use tessering principles to reach across dimensions in ways we haven't seen before. Maybe they fold reality to create shortcuts or to trap Vecna in a temporal loop or to undo some of the damage he's caused. But time travel gets messy quickly. It creates paradoxes and plot holes and questions about causality that are incredibly hard to resolve satisfyingly. If you can go back and change things, why not prevent everything bad from ever happening? Why not save everyone who died? Once you open that door, it's difficult to justify not using it to fix everything. If the Duffers use time manipulation, it'll be in a very specific, limited way. Not full-on timeline rewriting or do-overs, but maybe a crucial moment where time gets bent or frozen to give our heroes an advantage. A momentary pause in Vecna's spell, a few seconds of frozen time that let Eleven strike while he's vulnerable. That could work without creating the narrative problems of full-time travel. It would honour the A Wrinkle in Time references without going so far that it breaks the internal logic of the story. All right, we've analysed the evidence, discussed the theories, considered all the possibilities. Now let me tell you what I actually think is going to happen based on everything we know, fully acknowledging that the Duffers have surprised me before and will probably surprise me again. The Mind Flayer is revealed as the true villain. During the psychic battle, when Eleven is inside Vecna's mind fighting him, she discovers the truth, that Vecna has been the Mind Flayer's puppet or partner all along, that there's an even greater evil behind everything we've seen. The Mind Flayer manifests in some form, either entering Vecna's mindscape or attempting to cross into our reality through the dimensional merge. The final battle becomes not just 11 versus Vecna, but everyone fighting against this ancient cosmic horror that's been orchestrating everything. We get a brief moment where Henry Creel, the human part that still exists somewhere inside Vecna, breaks free and turns against his master. Not a full redemption arc, because Henry has done too many terrible things for that, but a final act of defiance before he dies. Maybe he helps Eleven land the killing blow against the Mind Flayer. Maybe he uses the last of his strength to hold the Mind Flayer back long enough for the bomb to go off. Maybe he just gives 11 crucial information about how to hurt the Mind Flayer before Vecna's consciousness reasserts control. It would be a moment of humanity shining through the monster, a reminder that Henry Creel was a victim before he became a perpetrator, that the Mind Flayer corrupted him from childhood. It wouldn't erase what he's done, but it would add complexity and tragedy to his end. One main character dies, either Steve Harrington or Jonathan Byers, but not both. My gut says Steve, completing his hero arc and devastating Dustin while giving Nancy closure with Jonathan. Steve dies saving someone, probably during the rescue mission in the abyss or the climb down the tower. It's heroic, it's meaningful, and it hurts in all the right ways, but it could be Jonathan instead. Jonathan's been quieter this season, less central to the plot, which sometimes means a character is being set up for a sacrificial death. He could die protecting Will or Joyce or Nancy, completing his arc as the protective older brother and the guy who always puts his family first. Either way, one of them doesn't make it out. Not both, because that would be too much, but one. And their death galvanizes everyone else to finish the mission and make sure the sacrifice wasn't in vain. I don't think 11 or Carly actually die. I think 11 loses her powers instead, burning them out in the final battle. The strain of fighting both Vecna and the Mind Flayer simultaneously, of using her abilities beyond their normal limits to protect everyone she loves, costs her the thing that's defined her since birth. Without her abilities, she's no longer valuable to the military. She can be free, but she loses part of her identity in the process. Carly might make a different choice. Carly might choose to stay in the Upside Down or the Abyss when it collapses, sacrificing herself to ensure no one can ever use her powers again. It would be sad, but in character, Carly has less to live for, less hope for a normal life, more anger and trauma. Her choosing death as freedom would be tragic and understandable. Will gets his hero moment using his powers alongside 11 and Carly, proving he's not just a victim, but a fighter who can turn his trauma into strength. He provides crucial intelligence through his connection to the hive mind, maybe even manages to briefly disrupt Vecna's concentration at a crucial moment. But then he survives, finally free from the Upside Down's hold on him, finally able to just be himself without monsters. Max fully recovers. She and Lucas get their happy ending because after everything Max has been through, possessed by Vecna, trapped in his mindscape, nearly killed multiple times, she deserves to live and heal and be happy. She and Lucas end up together, supporting each other through the aftermath, helping each other process everything they've experienced. The bomb plan works, but barely. There are complications. Maybe the tower starts collapsing while people are still on it. Maybe one of the children is harder to rescue than expected. Maybe Vecna partially recovers and tries to stop them. Someone stays behind longer than they should to make sure everyone else gets out. Probably Hopper doing another sacrifice play, because that's who he is. But he makes it out at the last second, injured but alive, pulled to safety by Joyce, who refuses to lose him again. When Mike stops the record and the bomb detonates, the Upside Down collapses in spectacular fashion. The exotic matter destabilizes, the wormhole structure falls apart, and the abyss gets severed from our reality. Everything trapped in the Upside Down at that moment, the Mind Flayer, any remaining monsters, the corruption and evil that's plagued Hawkins for years, gets sealed on the other side. Forever. Hawkins is finally free. The epilogue shows us 2 years later, in 1989. Hawkins is recovering, but changed. There's a memorial in the town square for everyone who died over the years. Barb, Bob, Billy, Eddie, and whoever dies in the finale. The town knows some version of the truth now. There's no way to hide what happened when dimensional barriers were literally visible in the sky. Some of the kids have moved away. Dustin is at MIT or Caltech, studying physics or engineering, trying to understand scientifically what they experienced. Robin is at college in California, finally comfortable being openly gay, sending letters to the friends she left behind. Nancy is a journalist, writing the real stories about what happened in Hawkins, making sure the truth is known, even if most people think she's writing fiction. Mike is still in Hawkins, working at the hardware store maybe, or helping Hopper with something. 11 is with him, powers gone but happy, learning to just be Jane. They're engaged or married, young but certain. She's teaching art classes to kids, drawing and painting the peaceful things she couldn't draw when everything was monsters and danger. Will is in Hawkins too because he couldn't leave. He's writing or painting or finding some creative outlet for everything he's experienced. He's out and comfortable, dating someone who makes him happy, no longer defined by his trauma. Lucas might be at college on a basketball scholarship, but he comes back regularly to see Max. Max is recovering, going to physical therapy, slowly getting better. The cane she uses isn't shameful. It's proof of survival, proof that Vecna couldn't break her. She's fierce and determined and beautiful, and Lucas loves her more than ever. Jonathan is hopefully alive in this epilogue, running a photography studio, capturing moments of beauty in a town that's seen too much horror. If he's the one who died, then Joyce and Hopper are raising his son or daughter, giving that child everything Jonathan would have wanted them to have. They're not as close as they used to be, this group of friends. They don't see each other every day like they did when they were kids fighting monsters. Some of them have moved away, built new lives, found new communities. The intensity that bonded them, shared trauma, life or death situations, the knowledge that they alone understood what really happened, has faded somewhat as normalcy returned. But they're still connected. They still call on birthdays, still send letters or postcards. They still gather for holidays when everyone's back in town, sitting around someone's dinner table, telling stories and laughing and remembering. The bonds forged in darkness haven't broken even if they've changed shape. It's bittersweet. It acknowledges that growing up means things change, that even the closest friendships evolve when people move on with their lives. You can't stay kids in a basement playing D&D forever, as much as you might want to, but it also shows that love survives, that the family they chose, the connections they forged while fighting for their lives, those things don't disappear just because they're not living in each other's pockets anymore. They've all grown and changed and moved forward, carrying those experiences and relationships with them as they build adult lives. That's my prediction. Mind Flayer as the real evil. Henry Creel getting a moment of redemption before the end. One major character, Death, probably Steve, 11 losing her powers but surviving, will finally free and able to live authentically. An epilogue showing them scattered but healing, changed but not broken. Before we wrap this up, before we all start counting down the hours until December 31st, I want to talk about why this finale matters so much beyond just finding out what happens to these characters we love. Stranger Things premiered in July 2016, over 9 years ago now. That's a significant portion of many people's lives, especially for younger viewers. An entire generation has grown up with this show. Kids who were the same age as Mike and Lucas and Dustin and Will in season 1 are adults now, dealing with jobs and relationships and figuring out their place in the world. We've literally aged alongside these characters. That kind of extended relationship with a story is rare. Most shows don't last this long. Most shows don't maintain quality and cultural relevance across nearly a decade of real time. Many shows that do last that long wear out their welcome, running past their natural endpoint because networks want to milk them for every dollar. But Stranger Things has been a genuine cultural phenomenon in ways that few shows achieve. It's influenced fashion, the 80s revival in clothing and design. It's influenced music, Kate Bush's Running Up That Hill becoming a massive hit almost 40 years after its release because of season 4. It's changed how we talk about the 1980s, creating this nostalgic mythology around that decade that blends actual history with Hollywood representation. The show has also been representation for a lot of people. Will's coming out story has resonated deeply with LGBTQ plus viewers who saw their own struggles reflected on screen. Eleven's journey from weapon to person, from being told she's only valuable for what she can do to discovering she has inherent worth just for existing, has meant something to people who felt used or devalued. The found family dynamics, the message that blood doesn't determine who your real family is, that's been powerful for people from complicated backgrounds. And the fact that the Duffers planned an ending from the beginning, that they've known for years how this story would conclude, that's actually special in television. So many shows get cancelled abruptly or drag on past their expiration date because there's still money to be made. But Stranger Things gets to end on its own terms, when the story's actually finished, with time to plan and execute the ending properly. That's a gift, both to the creators and to the audience. It means the finale should be satisfying, should provide actual closure, because they've been building toward it deliberately, rather than scrambling to wrap things up when cancellation is announced. The finale is going to be experienced in a unique way too. It's releasing on New Year's Eve, the last day of 2025. The transition point between one year and the next. People are going to watch it in theatres or at home, alone or with friends, and then they're going to step into a new year carrying whatever emotions that finale left them with. It's going to be a shared cultural moment in a way that's becoming increasingly rare. With streaming and time shifting and global release schedules, we don't often have these synchronized experiences anymore, where everyone is talking about the same thing at the same time. But the Stranger Things finale, releasing on New Year's Eve, will be one of those moments. Social media is going to explode. There are going to be watch parties and reaction videos and memes and analysis threads. People are going to be processing together, grieving together if characters we love die, celebrating together if our heroes win. For a few days, maybe even a few weeks, Stranger Things will dominate conversation in a way that hasn't really happened since Season 4 premiered, and then it'll be over. The theorizing will stop. The anticipation will be gone. Instead of wondering what comes next, we'll be discussing what happened. Instead of imagining possibilities, we'll be analysing choices. The active, forward-looking experience of being in the middle of a story will shift to the reflective, retrospective experience of having finished one. Stranger Things will become something we remember rather than something we're actively experiencing. It'll join those other cultural touchstones that define specific periods of our lives, shows and movies and books that we carry with us, that shaped us in ways we're still discovering. That's bittersweet, isn't it? We want to know how it ends. We're desperate for closure, for answers, for resolution. But getting those things means losing the anticipation, the speculation, the shared excitement of not knowing what comes next. I think about all the conversations this show has sparked over 9 years, the theories people have developed, the debates about character choices and plot directions, the incredible fan art and fan fiction and analysis videos. That's the real magic, not the upside down or the monsters or even the story itself, but the community it created. The ending is going to change all of that. The conversation will continue, obviously. People will be discussing and analysing Stranger Things for years. But it'll be a different kind of conversation. Looking back rather than forward, remembering rather than anticipating. Stranger Things deserves a good ending, not a perfect one. Perfect endings don't really exist because everyone has different ideas of what perfection looks like. But a good one, an honest one that honours the characters and their journeys and the fans who've been on this ride for 9 years. An ending that takes risks and makes difficult choices, that doesn't try to please everyone, but stays true to the story it's been telling. That provides closure while acknowledging that life continues beyond the final frame, that these characters will keep living and growing even after we stop watching. Whether we get that kind of ending remains to be seen. But in just a few days, we'll know. The mystery will be solved, the story will be finished, we'll finally have our answers, for better or worse. All right, we've covered theories about deaths, redemptions, the Mind Flayer, Operation Beanstalk, and everything in between. We've analysed the evidence, weighed the possibilities, tried to predict what the Duffers have planned for December 31st. We've laughed and speculated and felt all the emotions of anticipation and dread mixed together. The truth is, in just days, all this speculation becomes obsolete. We'll know what actually happens. The mystery will be solved, the story will be finished, and we'll finally have answers to questions we've been asking for years. But here's what I want you to remember, and I mean this sincerely. Endings are never as important as we think they are when we're anticipating them. The quality of the finale, whether it meets our expectations or surprises us or disappoints us, doesn't erase everything that came before. Whether Stranger Things sticks the landing or stumbles doesn't change the moments that made us cry or laugh or jump in previous seasons. It doesn't change the way this show made us feel, the connections we formed with these characters, the friendships we made with other fans who loved it as much as we did. The finale will come and go. Some people will love it, some will hate it. Most will probably land somewhere in the middle, satisfied with some choices and confused or disappointed by others. That's just how finales work. It's impossible to meet every viewer's expectations when everyone has spent years developing their own ideas of what the perfect ending would be. But what stays is the experience. The late nights binge watching earlier seasons, the conversations with friends about theories and favourite characters, the emotional connection you formed with these kids from Indiana who saved the world while trying to figure out who they were, the way certain scenes or lines or moments stuck with you became part of your personal cultural vocabulary. That's what matters. Not whether your favourite character survives or whether your pet theory was correct, but that we were here for it, that we experienced this story together, across borders and time zones and different stages of our lives, connected by something beautiful and strange and deeply human. The finale will give us an ending to the plot, but the impact of Stranger Things, the way it's shaped us and entertained us and brought us together, that doesn't end when the credits roll. So yes, I'll be watching on December 31st with my heart in my throat, hoping for the best and preparing for the worst. I'll be right there with all of you, experiencing it in real time, feeling everything. But I'll also be grateful. Grateful that this show existed. Grateful that I got to be part of this community. Grateful for 9 years of storytelling that gave me characters to love and mysteries to solve, and a world to get lost in when our actual world felt too complicated or painful. Whatever happens in the finale, we had this. We had the journey, and that's worth something. So here's where we'll end tonight's theory session. We've covered where Volume 2 left us, the revelation about the Upside Down being a wormhole to the abyss, the exotic matter holding it together, Holly and the other children trapped in the pain tree. We discussed Max's triumphant awakening and her knowledge of Vecna's mindscape. We explored Will's beautiful coming out scene and his powers derived from the hive mind connection. We examined Carly's rescue and the horrifying truth about how Eleven and the others got their powers from Henry Creel's blood. We walked through Operation Beanstalk, that brilliant and terrifying plan to let Vecna start his dimensional merge and then interrupt it, using the radio tower as a bridge to rescue the children and plant the bomb that will sever the abyss from our reality forever. We considered the mind flayer theory, the possibility that Vecna is just a puppet and the real villain is the ancient cosmic horror that's been pulling strings from the shadows since the beginning. We agonized over who might die, Steve completing his hero arc, the suicide pact between Eleven and Carly, the possibility of Will's story coming full circle. We imagined an epilogue set 2 years later, showing our heroes scattered but healing, changed but not broken, carrying their experiences into adult lives that finally don't include fighting monsters. In a few days, on December 31st, the finale drops and we'll finally have our answers. Whether you're watching it in theatres with a crowd of fans or at home on your couch, alone or with the friends who've been theorising alongside you for years, I hope it gives you the ending you're hoping for. Until then, stay safe. Process your emotions however you need to, and may the finale surprise you in the best possible way, giving us something we couldn't have predicted, but that makes perfect sense once we see it. Thanks for joining me on this final theory deep dive. If you want to support the channel and make sure you don't miss my post-finale breakdown, hit that subscribe button below. I'll see you after the finale for a full analysis of how it all ended, what worked and what didn't, and what this story has meant to us over 9 incredible years. Take care, everyone. May the upside down stay closed. May our heroes find peace, and may we all step into 2026 carrying the best parts of this story with us. Goodbye, Hawkins. It's been one hell of a ride.